when Daniel was in captivity, he was very depressed, obviously. And in the 9th chapter, he was praying to God. And just, we're going to look at Daniel 8 and 9. We're really going to look at 8, but 9 is a bit of a setup. And he says in the beginning of the 8th chapter that he was fasting and praying. Let's see, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans, and the Medo-Persians had just taken over Babylon, and Daniel had been captain of Babylon. Now he's captive to these guys too. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. And Daniel was home doing his morning devotions. He's reading the book of Jeremiah. He came to the 25th chapter. God had told the prophet Jeremiah years before that the people of Israel would be taken off captive for 70 years in Babylon. And now he's looking and going, hey, I've been here 70 years. This is the end. I'm going to be released. And he was excited. And so he, verse 3, I set my face to the Lord to seek by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes, and basically seeking by God, okay, when do we get out? In a couple of weeks. And he's basically asking God, okay, the 70 years are up. Let us go. Now, unfortunately for him, as he's going through and praying and fasting, all of a sudden, what happens is, verse 21, while I was yet speaking in prayer, the angel Gabriel, he calls him the man Gabriel, looks like a man, whom I'd seen in the vision at the beginning, back in the 8th chapter, now shows up and touches me, verse 22, and he informs me, and he talks with me and says, Daniel, I'm now come forth to give thee some skill and understanding. And at the beginning of thy supplication, you know, when you were praying, the commandment came forth from God, and I'm come to show thee, thou art greatly beloved. And so I want you to understand the matter and consider the vision. And then the chapter closes with 4 little verses, 24 through 27, which is the greatest prophecy in the Bible about the coming of the Messiah and the final work of the Messiah. And it's a long, difficult prophecy, and we've taught it before. And I remember, Mark, were you with us the first time when we did that conference in Grand Island? Were you with us then, or did you come after? Our church had just begun. We were on Maple, and we went to Grand Island, and we rented a hotel room. Someone had that idea that more people would come if we went to a hotel, and we put notices out to bring people in. And I taught that, okay. And it took me 5 hours to teach those 4 verses, because there's a lot in them, because, I mean, Gabriel's talking to Daniel, and Daniel is completely familiar with the Old Testament. And I'm talking to a bunch of Gentiles in Grand Island who aren't even familiar with the city they live in or the country they live in. And so, you know, you got to build from the ground up, and it takes 5 hours to teach it. But basically, what is being revealed to Daniel here is something that knocked him for a loop, because later on he says, I was astonished by the whole thing, is that it's not going to be just 70 years. It's going to be 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, the Jews. And Daniel understood from Genesis that a week to God is a week of years. So it's 70 weeks of years. So that's 7 years times 70. That's 490 years. And he lays out, you're going to be in captivity longer. Now, okay, so Daniel has to swallow this truth. God had kind of sort of prepared him a little bit for the truth in the 7th chapter, when God gave him a dream and a vision. And the dream and the vision was that there were going to be a number of empires. There would be the lion of Babylon, and then there would be the bear of Medo-Persia, and then there would be the leopard of Greece, and then there would be the dreadful beast of Rome. And I think what he was trying to show Daniel is that you Jews who had my word and to whom I made the head of nations, because you disobeyed my word and you disobeyed the prophets, I let you fall into captivity under the Gentiles, and you're going to now remain under the Gentiles. And you're no longer going to be the head of nations. And how long will that last? Well, he's going to tell you until the Messiah, the Prince, comes. And then only Messiah, the Prince, is going to come and restore everything. And for a bigger picture type of thought would be, now all the Gentile nations are ruled by the devil. He's the god of this world. Every Gentile nation is a heathen nation. God didn't build the nation. God didn't give his oracles to the nation. So the nations do what seems right in their own eyes. Some of them have monarchies. Some of them have oligarchies. Some of them have republics. Some of them have democracies. But they're all Gentile nations doing what's right in their own eyes, and it's not of God. And God is just basically showing Israel, you had my word, you disobeyed my word, the Gentiles are ruling. Daniel's thought might be, hey, this doesn't seem fair. But then God makes him think a little and says, let's go back to the Garden of Eden. I gave dominion to Adam. I gave dominion to you Jews. What happened to Adam? He fell. He lost dominion. Who took over? The devil. And the devil ran everything until I called you people, and I said, I'm going to give you a piece of land, the kingdom of heaven. You're going to live there, and I won't let the devil in there as long as you obey my word. They disobeyed the word. In came the seducing spirits. In came the devils, and they fell too. And now the whole world is under the prince of this world with a little p, the god of this world with a little g, and that's what we live under. So Daniel is kind of slowly learning these hard to swallow lessons, but they're reality. Okay, we can't deny reality, spiritual reality. All right, so Daniel gets this prophecy here about how God finally is going to work things out. Let's say verse 25, know therefore and understand from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince. And here in the midst of the prophecy is always the good news of the Messiah. Jesus said, you know, the book testifies of me. When you search the scriptures, you're going to see me. I mean, the only one that's going to be able to beat the devil is Jesus Christ. Everyone else has fallen to him. David fell to him. Solomon fell to him. I mean, everyone in this audience has fallen to him at one place or time. Are there any hands of exceptions out there? There's a hand of exception in the back. No. Okay. I mean, we've all fallen to the devil. And the only one that could beat him is Jesus Christ. And until Messiah the Prince comes, what are you going to do? And the sad thing is, there's just going to end of verse 26. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined. And until Christ ends the war and beats the devil at the Battle of Armageddon, it's kind of desolate on planet Earth. Now, I know that there are a few exceptions, and God always does permit temporary exceptions to show the truth. The exception kind of proves the rule. And so we had a temporary exception here in the United States for about 140 years there. And England had a temporary exception there when God gave them this book. It didn't last that long. And they quickly fell from the book, just like the Jews did, back into disobedience. And America has fallen from the book into disobedience. I think you'd all agree. I mean, if you're condoning marriage between men and men and you're celebrating things at the Olympics, I mean, like the other day, obviously the world is, desolation of the spirit is determined, and where the spirit goes, everything else will fall too. If you sow to the flesh, you're going to reap corruption. And so it's a mess. So Daniel's reading this thing, and it's the 9th chapter. Well, curiously, I reread my Bible a lot, you know. And when I'm rereading, I think, and I look for stuff. And I'm understanding that the 9th chapter is, again, the greatest prophecy in the Bible. It's a portrait of the first and the second coming of the Lord, with a separation in there that nobody quite understands how long the separation is. It's been 2,000 years about between the first and second coming, but all through the Old Testament, prophecy of first coming of Messiah, second coming of Messiah, all the way through there. Even at the very first, they call it the protevangel of Genesis 3:15, there's the first coming prophecy of when he bruises Satan's head at Calvary, and then the second coming when finally they have the Battle of Armageddon and the Messiah takes over. All through the book, the first and second coming. The Jews had trouble seeing it ahead of time, but we're in the valley in between, and we can obviously, the first coming was back then, the second coming is next. So I'm looking at this 9th chapter. I remember in the 7th chapter was the first dream given to Daniel himself. And the earlier dreams were given to Gentiles, and Daniel was allowed to interpret them. But this is a dream given to Daniel, a prophet. And in this 7th chapter, he lays out the times of the Gentiles for him. And he shows when the times of the Gentiles are all done in verse 9 of the 7th chapter, that the thrones will all be cast down and the Ancient of Days, God the Father, will sit. And verse 13, and in the dream, in the night visions, here comes the Son of Man with the clouds of heaven coming to the Ancient of Days. The Son of Man is brought before the Ancient of Days, and there's given him, the Son of Man, dominion and glory and a kingdom, and all people and nations and languages are going to serve him. His dominion will be everlasting. It will never pass away. And what he's saying is, the Gentiles may have their nations, and one will rise and one will fall, and one will rise, and it'll be like a roller coaster, and it'll go until one day the Son of Man comes. And then all the old ones are gone. And when he takes over, his isn't going to rise and fall. There won't be the rise and the fall of the empire and the kingdom of Jesus Christ. It will be the rise for all of eternity. He's taking it for eternity. So Daniel gets this in the 7th chapter. Then in the 9th chapter, he gets that thing. But in between the 7th and the 9th is 8. And in the 8th chapter, he's given another vision. And here it is. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, to Daniel. Verse 2, I saw in the vision, it came to pass when I saw, I was in Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. What God is already doing with him is he's taking him in the vision to the future. How do I know that? Because it's at the time of Belshazzar. It's still the Babylonian rule. But God's carrying him off to Shushan, the palace, in the future. He's moving him to the future to show him a vision here that's going to happen in the future. And what does he see? He says, I lift up my eyes, and there stood before the river, that would be the river he was at, I don't remember, Ulai. And there was a ram which had 2 horns. The 2 horns were high. One was higher than the other. The higher came up last. And so he's looking to the east, and in the east he sees a ram. And the ram has 2 horns. All right. He doesn't know. He's just watching this vision. It's going on. What I saw was, verse 4, the ram started pushing westward. We're going to have the west over here. We're going to see in a minute. So I've got the east, and the west. It's pushing westward, and I think he said, and northward, and southward. All right. And what did it do? And no beast could stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. He, the ram, did according to his will. He became great. All right, so it's God's giving him a portrait of another world empire coming on the scene out of the east, and it's a powerful, conquering empire. They have a word for that. What do they call that word? They teach it in the liberal schools. Imperialism, imperialistic. Okay, something the United States never was. We were not imperialistic, but Russia, Soviet Union was, as it went and took over places. Other nations have done this. Rome did it. I mean, Babylon did it. Here's one coming out of the east doing it. And this is kind of the story of man. Man wants and he conquers and he takes and because he lusts to have more. He's not satisfied with what God gave him. So he sees this. Now, in the dream also, verse 5, as I was considering this whole thing, behold, all of a sudden, from the west comes a he-goat. And here comes the he-goat out of the west. And he came on the face of the whole earth. He touched not the ground. I mean, he could really move quickly. I mean, he didn't have to walk slowly. He could bound and go quickly. Covered a lot of territory fast. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And so he had what's called the notable horn. It'll be called a great horn. It'll be called other adjectives to describe the horn in a few minutes. Okay. He, that would be the he-goat, came to the ram that had the two horns, which I had seen standing before the river. And he ran into him in the fury of his power. I saw him, that would be the he-goat, come close to the ram, and he, that be the he-goat, was moved with choler against him, against the ram. Choler is like a furious, bitter anger. He hates that thing. I mean, he hates that ram, and he's flying in this direction, and there's going to be a battle. Okay, so what happens? And he smote the ram, end of verse 7, and he brake his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, to cast him to the ground. He stamped upon him. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand, and the he-goat waxed very great. So Daniel gets this vision. Now, he doesn't quite understand what's going on. And verse 13, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said to that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the transgression, the desolation, and they're going on. And verse 15, it came to pass when I, even Daniel, had seen the vision, and I sought for meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. Now this is Jesus Christ. This is a Christophany appearing in his dream. The man Christ Jesus, and the man, I heard the man's voice between the banks of Ulai, and he called and he said, Gabriel, he's calling the angel Gabriel, make this man, Daniel, understand the vision. So he, Gabriel, came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid. I fell on my face, and he said, oh, understand, O son of man. Now these are the phrases that caught me when I was reading, and I'll just share with you. You know, I have been a reader not only of Bible, but of biblical material. So I've read Bullinger and Matthew Henry and Adam Clark and Spurgeon and Larkin and Ruckman and Knox and Gipp and Arnold Friesian Midnight Call. I've read all these. I got nothing. You better get me a hobby. And I got free time on my hands. We got to do something. You know, can somebody subscribe to Netflix for me so maybe I can stop all this reading? Anyways, and so I read these things. And as I'm reading them, all these people have given commentary to the 8th chapter. But I saw something that none of them saw. Now, I might be nuts. We'll see. Anyways, the standard commentary in all of them, McGee, I can bring them up from the basement if you want to read them, is this. See, because as you go on, verse 19, Gabriel said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. At the time appointed, the end shall be. That phrase hit me a second time when I'm reading. It didn't seem to hit any of the other writers. Here's what happened. Verse 20, Gabriel, the ram which thou sawest with the two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So now, what I want to show you, this is my mind. When I see prophecy in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, I think of first coming, second coming. I think of a dual application to prophecy. There's a near term for the first coming, there's a far term for the second. Gabriel is giving him the first term interpretation here. That's what he's doing. Before the first coming of the Lord, Media, Persia. There was Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian. It turned out that while Babylon was ruling the world, the Medes were kind of growing. They were getting a little army together. They were learning a few things. The Persians were growing, and they decided to make an alliance like Canada and America. Okay? You know, Canada got here first, but America got bigger. The second horn became the bigger. Same with Media Persia. Persia became the larger and more powerful of the two. So this prophecy is filling out perfectly. This is being given to Daniel 230 years before it occurs. Okay? And so he's getting this prophecy 2 centuries before it occurs. This is one of the reasons scholars hate the book of Daniel, because he has prophecies in here that were 4 centuries before they occurred. And the scholars say nobody knows prophecy, so they date Daniel as being written in 150 BC, as opposed to when it was written in 600 BC. They can't handle it. There's confirmation that Daniel lived back there, one of which is in Ezekiel, when he said, if Daniel were before me. And so they knew each other. But nonetheless, the scholars hate this book, but Daniel's getting this prophecy 200 years before it occurs, that the Medo-Persians, verse 21, and the rough goat is Greece. And with the great horn between his eyes is the first king. Who's the first king of Greece? Alexander the Great. That's the notable horn. That's what history calls him, Alexander the Great. And what happened is they came, Alexander the Great, invented one style of war called the Blitzkrieg. He learned to attack quickly. Remember it said he came, didn't even touch the ground? I mean, normally an army moves real slowly. He learned how to move his armies on horses very quickly, and they would cover way more. So the scout would say, they're 40 miles away, that they're moving at a rate of 8 miles a day. It's going to take them 5 days to get here, and they'd wake up in the morning and they were on top of them. And so they had the Blitzkrieg. The Nazis took that. They took that, yeah. Anyways, so he's getting the picture of all this, and this all happened, this battle happened around, I think I got another one here. This was around 340 BC, around then. Around then, okay. Now what happened was the first king, end of verse 21, that being broken, because the great horn, the little horn, the notable horn broke. Alexander the Great died. And when he died, 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms. He had 4 generals that worked next to him. There was General Seleucus, General Ptolemy, General Lysimachus, and General Cassander. And they took his massive, when he conquered them, he conquered the world, Alexander the Great. And then when he died, they split into 4 pieces. They kind of like divided it up. Oh, you get this, you get that. And Seleucus took the northern region of Syria. Ptolemy took Egypt in the southern. Lysimachus took Asia Minor. And Cassander took Macedonia, Achaia, which is where modern Greece is. And they had the first Olympic Games. And so that's what happened. So this is all predicted. It happened just as they said. And that's what every commentary has, and that's the end of it. But Crazy Man here reads it and says, look at the end of verse 17 and the end of verse 19. Understand, O son of man, at the time of the end shall be the vision. Verse 19, the last end of the indignation, at the time appointed the end shall be. So we've all got the near term in here. Let me try and make this a little better, because I want to put the far term beneath it, because this is the one I had to think about. So what is the far term application? So I'm reading back in 2001, 2002, and I'm going, Lord, there's more here. I mean, this prophecy isn't just about 300 something BC. This prophecy's got something to do at the time of the end, which is the second coming, the end, Armageddon, which is Revelation. What's the application? What's going on? Okay, let me see. The he-goat, the notable horn would be Alexander the Great, we'll call him. All right. So I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to get some understanding. Now, when Daniel had that earlier dream in the 7th chapter, and Nebuchadnezzar had his dream in the 2nd chapter, and God showed them, he said there's going to be a procession of Gentile empires. After Babylon will be Media Persia. After Media Persia will come Greece. And then finally will come Rome. So I'm trying to get an understanding, and I'm trying to look at things. I'm a big picture guy. Genesis 10, Noah had 3 sons. Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Exactly. When Adam lost the kingdom to the devil, God said, I'm going to give each one of those boys a chance to rule and see if they can fight the devil. God already knew they're not going to do it, but I want to give them a chance. So at least they can say, well, you never gave me a chance. You know, you gave Timmy a chance, but I never had a chance. So the first world empire was Egypt. That's Ham. They enslaved the Jews. God didn't like that. He took his people out, and he put the Jews in charge. That's Shem. Semite, anti-Semite. Jews come from Shem. So now the head of the world, for a while, Egypt. Now the head of the world, Israel. When Israel fell, he allowed these two, these are Shemites, to try. He said, okay, I'll try some bright Shemites. Let's see what they do. Even with one of them being Cyrus, my servant, let's see what happens. They did the exact same thing. They disobeyed God's word. That's kind of what we do. We disobey God's word. And now Japheth. After Rome, who was it? Spain, Japheth. Germany, Japheth. England, Japheth. America, Japheth. To the time of the end. God is allowing this to go on because he's going to put everyone in judgment one day and say, every one of you is a failure. The only one that didn't fail is Messiah the Prince. So if you're smart, you bow the knee to him and you follow him. But if you fight with me, you lose. Okay, God's making sense of this thing. So I'm watching this thing now. I'm looking at America, England, Germany. What was Greece known for? Well, they were the first democracy. Rome changed that to a Senate and a republic. Greece was known for wisdom and education. Turn quickly to Romans chapter 1. I'm always trying to put big pictures together. Romans chapter 1. Here's Paul, and Paul's desire is to preach, and he wants to, verse 9, serve God with my spirit in the gospel of his Son. That's the greatest service you can give to God is spiritual service, not physical. And the greatest spiritual service is giving out God's gospel of his Son. That's the only hope for mankind. There's no hope in any nation at all. I love America, but even if you could clone Donald Trump, who also loves America, and you could get rid of all the bureaus in America, and you could go back to local school boards with no federal control so you can take care of your kids. It's a bunch of sinners. And sin would still abound, even if they're making a lot of money. because they'd spend it on their lusts. It wouldn't work out. Okay? So the gospel is what's needed for sinners. That's their only hope. So Paul's doing it. And Paul says in verse 14, watch what he says. I am a debtor both to A, the Greeks, and B, the barbarians. What do you mean? Both to A, the wise, and to B, the unwise, the barbarians. The way it worked was the Greeks had developed philosophy. Truth is, they stole it from the Jews. If you've ever read the book of Ecclesiastes, every philosophy was written by Solomon before Socrates was a thought in his father's, a gleam in his eye. Okay, you go back, we studied Ecclesiastes in the basement years ago. Listen to the basement tapes on Ecclesiastes. Every philosophy's in there. But they stole it, and then they gave credit to the Greeks. Just like Abraham Lincoln stole the saying of Jesus Christ, a house divided will not stand, and they give it to Lincoln. Lincoln didn't write that. Jesus said that. Okay, so it's typical of robbers and Gentiles to steal stuff from the Bible. Nonetheless, the Greeks were big into education. Alexander the Greek founded the Alexandrian Library at Alexandria. And all the philosophers were there, and all the books were there, and all that kind of stuff. And so they were big into education and democracy. Rome was, they found education somewhat, and they would take from the Greeks. If you ever notice, the Greek god Zeus is the Roman god Jupiter. And you can just go right along and see how one god becomes another, and they change the names to confuse the innocent. They were big at army and navy. And they found the way to rule the world is by the sword and by the iron sword, which is why God described them as having iron teeth. So you look at this, and you look at all the nations subsequently for the past 2,000 years, and they're in Europe. They're either democracies, senates, they like education, and they're big at army and navy. They're Greco-Roman. Look at, if you ever go to Washington, D.C., look at the Greek columns, look at the Roman architecture, and look at the Senate. I mean, they're Greco-Roman is what they are. It's Japheth. Japheth is a builder. They like to build. The Romans, they built the roads, the Roman road. All roads lead to Rome. They built all these roads. Japheth is a builder. Japheth likes education. When have you ever heard a politician talk bad about education? When have you heard a politician talk bad about the army or the navy? When have you heard a politician talk bad about democracy? That's Japheth. That's the mindset of Japheth. Okay. So this is the near term. So I said, oh my God, I got it. The far term. I understand what this is going to be. Now, in the Bible, there are types. Joseph is a type of Jesus Christ. Judah was a type of Jesus Christ. You know, Father, if I don't bring him back, I'll be sacrificed for my brother. I mean, that's a type of Jesus Christ. David was a type of Jesus Christ. He was a king, he was a prophet, and he handled the showbread like a priest, and Jesus is a prophet, priest, and king. There are types of Jesus Christ. There are types of the Antichrist. Pharaoh, a type of the Antichrist. Nebuchadnezzar, a type of Alexander the Great, a type of the Antichrist. The notable horn. Okay, the he-goat wasn't run by a bunch of people, he was run by one. I said, this is a picture of, I don't know what to call it, the final world empire. And the notable horn will be Antichrist. The final world empire will be Japhethic, Greco-Roman at heart. It will be America, England, Europe. That's what it's going to be. It's not going to be out of Africa. It's not going to be out of Australia. It's not going to be out of Malaysia or the Philippines. That's where it's going to be. I mean, look at the past 400 or 500 years. Where have all the inventions come from? All the devil's devices have come out of us. Radio, TV, armies, flying airplanes, rockets. That's all Japheth. Okay. And the devil is going to run this thing, and he wants his devices in there. And so this is the final world empire, the far-term application. What's this? Well, we're coming to the east. Back over here, Shem. 2 horns. I said, oh my goodness, this is Islam. Now, if you know anything about Islam, Islam began in the 7th century, and it was a fallen angel convincing a man that he had seen God, just like Paul warned in 2 Corinthians 11. I fear, because the devil appears as an angel of light, and he will beguile you, and he'll turn you into fake ministers. And they came up with that. And when Muhammad died, his relatives tried to take over the movement. I don't know how much you know on the movement. How far am I on time? Anybody got a concept, a notion, anything? I think I lost track. Hello, Martin? How far along am I, Martin? Good. Okay, we got. Can you folks stay? Can you stay? All right. Okay. So, when Muhammad died, his relatives wanted to take over the movement, and they were related to him, and they're called Shia, or Shiites. Muhammad's book is a most interesting book. I don't even think he wrote it. It was written after he died, but it's claimed to be written by him, the Quran. And if you remember anything about him, when he began in Mecca, which was a trading place where people from all over came, it was a commercial center. And if you're a smart mayor, first off, you can't be Democratic. So let's say you're a good Republican mayor, and you want business in your area. Okay, so if I want business, I want to be accommodating to business, and I want to let them come in. And what I want to do is I don't want to offend them. So you're from your area. What's your favorite God? Who do you worship where you are? Oh, good. Well, we'll have a small place where you can worship so you feel at home. And what's yours? And Mecca had all little shrines all over. So no matter where they came from, they could feel at home. They were away from man is hopelessly religious. They could bow to their God and they could get back to their commercial work, because the average lost man, the God thing is just like a few % of his life. The real thing is all that he have will he give for his money. I mean, there's a love of money, not the love of God. But they got their fake gods. And so they're doing that. And Muhammad is getting this thing from the devil saying, there's only one God. Really, what is it? It's Allah. Allah was there were 2 gods, Alem and Allah. I don't know who invented them. I don't know where they're from, Persian gods or Ammonite gods or whatever. And there was the male god, Alem, and the female god, Allah. And he was told, this is the true God. The rest of them are all fake. And so what he tried to do was, through preaching in Mecca for about 10 years, he tried to tell people, hey, I know the real God. I had a vision. It's Allah. We got to knock all these things down. And he tried for about 10 years to raise up followers, and he raised about 100 followers, and he raised a lot of animosity from the common council in the city, like, what the hell are you doing? I mean, when you say stuff like this, people don't want to come back. They think we're nuts. They don't hear this when they're over in Corinth and they're over. I mean, we don't want this over here. And they finally ran him out of town after 10 years. And he went with his 100 followers up to the north. Medina is north. When he got up there, he made friends with a guy who was a warrior. And the warrior said, you want a crowd. You want people to follow you. They ain't going to listen to you preach. People are going to listen to the sword. And then he started the Quran. If you ever read it, it has verses when he was in Medina, and be kind to the people of the book, and don't fight with the people of the book. Or Mecca. When he got to Medina, he changed it, like cut their heads off. And if you see anyone that doesn't believe, an unbeliever, an infidel, kill them. And all those verses are in there. And it's like, what is this all about? And if you go, they teach the law of abrogation. That's what they teach at the mosques. And that means God changes his mind. Allah changes his mind. And you never know when he's going to change his mind. But if he changes his mind, you follow the last thing he said. So right now, if you're a faithful Muslim, you follow the verses from Medina and you try and kill everybody. I don't know if you're aware of this. If you're not, and you think I'm making it up, do your own research. Go out and find some people who have left Islam and written books. Emil, Amir, I don't know their names. I got the books at home. I forget people's names. I don't even know your names. But I do remember facts, and so you'll learn that's what happened. So he built an army. He built 100 people in 10 years. He built 10,000 people in the next 5. And he went out on raids and caravans, and he started killing, and he finally went back to Mecca, and he killed the Common Council, and he took over, and he started living by the sword. And when they came out, I can't remember the names, man. Bill something or other. Anybody remember his name? I told you about him 15 years ago. The professor at the university that follows Muslim. He ain't a saved man. He's a lost man. And he's been studying all their stuff. Bill something or other. Can't remember his name. Go back to my old tapes. He followed them from 700 on, and the Muslims came out and they began conquering by the sword and killing. Oh, people are converting to Islam. The hell they are. They're being forced by the sword. These are your options: die or convert. And skin for skin, all that a man hath will he give for his life. I'll give you everything, just keep me alive. And so little by little, they pressed westward, northward, southward. They got into Africa. They came raging across the Middle East. They went up north into Europe, and they were expanding. And Bill, whatever his name is, you can look at his battle map, and you can watch these things. He does it in time-lapse photography, and you see they're taking, and they're expanding at this time. Remember, it's the Middle Ages. It's the Dark Ages, okay? The Roman Catholic Church is in charge in Europe, and the Roman Catholic Church is keeping everyone ignorant, right? They know smart people leave. Don't read the book. You can't read the book. You don't understand the book. They wanted even the kings to be stupid, and they would put dumb kings on the throne, puppet kings. And when the king was up there, well, the priest will advise you. And with the priest as the advisor, they did whatever the Pope wanted, because he's basically getting his orders from the Pope. So Europe is a bunch of little city-states and all broken up. There's not big empires there. There's a few countries. They're not that bright. And the Muslims are moving in. They're getting into Spain. They're getting into Italy. They're moving across areas like that, like France. And they probably would have conquered everything except for these guys. And all of a sudden, these guys invented the printing press. And with the printing press, they started putting books out. And when they started putting books out, there was a rebirth. They call it the Renaissance. There's another name for it, the Enlightenment. And all of a sudden, people got smart. And God does give gifts to people. And they invented weapons. And the Muslims aren't known for their brains, okay? They were known for the sword. They basically live a 7th century lifestyle. They wear the garb of the 7th century. They try and live like it's the 7th century. And all of a sudden, Europe is getting wise, and they're pushing them back and then pushing them out. And the Muslims are kind of pushed back into the Middle East. Now, I don't know. They're not happy about that. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Muhammad stole from the God is God, and you'd have to read this again, go back and read Joshua. God said to Joshua, you carry the Ark of the Covenant, and wherever the Ark of the Covenant sets foot, it's mine forever. See, that's why God, that's his land, Israel. God's Ark of the Covenant. Read Joshua again. Read how he swept across the land. The Ark of the Covenant went all the way to the north, came all the way back down to the north, south, finally settled the land by the 17th chapter. Read Joshua. And God said, every place the Ark of the Covenant touches is mine. And the devil said, everywhere my people step is mine. Okay, he's a counterfeiter. He copies. They want their land back. They have been flooding across nations in the 20th century under tolerance. America, Canada, Germany, Netherlands, Britain, Ireland. And they're taught, when you're in the minority, go along and get along. But another thing about Japheth they learned in the 20th century, since Japheth is afraid of the lie of overpopulation, which is a lie. We're nowhere near overpopulated. This world could easily carry 20 billion with the present resources. easily. That's another story, and believe whatever you want. Thomas Malthus, get out of here. Anyways, since Japheth is afraid of overpopulation, and the average European, English, and American family is 1.8 people, when you move in, have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then eventually you'll be able to take over like Dearborn, Michigan. And when there's enough of you, you take over the whole place. He-goat. Go back to the 8th chapter. Let's read it. Verse 4. And again the ram pushing westward. This is Islam. Oh, by the way, I told you, Islam, there's the Shiites, that was the relatives of Muhammad, and then the followers were the Sunnis. They came up second. And only 10% are Shiite, 90% are Sunni, and the second horn is the bigger horn. And of the 57 Muslim nations, most of them are Sunni. The Shiites are the ones that are trouble. They're like the Hornets. They're the real fighters. They really follow after Muhammad. But they'll come together against a common enemy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and so they'll come together for that, and then they'll fight when they finally get the world, if they do, and they won't. But anyways, they're pushing westward, northward, and southward. And then verse 5, I was considering, and behold, an he-goat, this is the Antichrist, is going to come from the west. And what's he going to do? Verse 7, he's going to come to the ram moved with choler against him. He's angry. He's bitter. He's sick of this. He's sick of it. So I'm up at 2 o'clock the other night, and a thing pops up on my screen about what happened in Germany. Anybody see what happened in Germany? The German army moved in and took over 3 mosques, and they threw them out. And they said, we're done. Now, I listened to the minister of Homeland, I don't know what, the interior or whatever, was a woman in her 60s. She basically, now this is not a war against religion. It's just a war against extremists. We're against these extreme Shiites who run these mosques. And they took out 3 mosques. In 2002, I said, you know what's going to happen? The Antichrist is going to go after Islam. That's what's going to happen. And so I said, because I noticed end time, end time, end time, end time. I've been saying this for 22 years. Everybody says you're nuts. You're the only one that says, and maybe I'm nuts. I've been saying for 22 years, a man is going to step to the microphone one day, and he's going to say, we'll never have peace and safety till we kill these friggin' Muslims. They are hornets and locusts all over the earth. Now, in the past 2 days, popping up on my screen, Netherlands, Ireland, yesterday in England, there were riots in the street in London. They want their country back. They're looking for a leader. They're waiting for a man to step to the microphone. What's the next chapter after Daniel 8? 9. Let's read the 9th chapter in the prophecy there. So what is going to happen in the 9th chapter when it all winds up? Verse 26. After 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. And he was at Calvary. 9:26. But not for himself. No, he died for our sins, not his own. Then there's that colon. And now we're going to jump. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And 40 years later, the Romans came and destroyed Jerusalem. And you can read about it. I mean, it's common knowledge. Domitian, Titus, the armies came in. Not only Eusebius, but Josephus has it recorded how many thousands of people were killed, men, women, and children, and they were scattered in the great diaspora. But it's the people of the prince that shall come. The prince, he was Roman, he was Japheth. Okay. And the end thereof, now it skips all the way to the second coming in Armageddon, shall be with a flood, and until the end of the war, until Armageddon's finished, desolations are determined. Verse 27, and he, this is the prince that shall come of the revived Greco-Roman Empire, the Antichrist, he'll confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. This is the 7-year period. Now, here's what's going to happen. You've now got Japheth fighting against Islam. And in the middle of this whole thing are Jews. Because he's writing to Daniel and his people. Remember 24, verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. So this prophecy is to the Jews. And so now, the prince that's going to come wants to confirm a covenant. Now, he's going to confirm a covenant with the Jews. See, the Jews they're going to be forced to make a choice. Would you like to join with the Muslims, or would you like to join with us? The other day, I had the business news on, and it wasn't even a reporter for Fox Business News. It was some reporter somewhere in Gaza. I think he was in Gaza. And he was on the streets doing interviews, and I heard them, and I was stunned. He was asking the people, what did you think of the October 7th attack against Israel? We think it was good. What did you think about taking hostages? We think it's good. Do you think they should release the hostages? No, I think they should keep the hostages. This is what they were saying. 100%. It wasn't 50-50. It wasn't 70-30. It was 100% of the people, Israel haters, Jew haters. Even if the Jews are a little worried about a world empire that has Germany in it, we know how much these guys hate us. And they confirm the covenant, and the Antichrist will sign the covenant with the Jews. So my interpretation of the far-term prophecy has been the ram with the 2 horns is Islam, and the he-goat is going to be the world empire of the Antichrist, the new Alexander the Great, and there's going to be a battle, and the Jews are going to sign a covenant, like it says right there. He'll confirm the covenant, verse 27, for 1 week, and then in the midst of the week, 3.5 years later, after he'll tell them, here's what he'll say. Here's an easy sell to the Jews. So we're going to war with the Muslims. And the Jews say, we've had trouble with them too. So we really don't care about your problems. They're in America. They're in England. They're in Germany. We want them out. We want them dead. We're going after them. This will be so easy to sell. You do understand that men are killers at heart. They're not peaceful at heart. Why can't we get together? You ain't going to get together. The lost nature doesn't want to get together. Read Mark chapter 7, verses 21 through 23. What comes out of the heart of lost man? Murders, adulteries, thefts, fornications, killings. That's what lost men do. Have you read the history of mankind? I mean, there's the elephant in the room. We're all basically good. Explain that. Over 6,000 years of history. All right. So, we're going to fight the Muslims. Now, we understand you've always wanted to build your temple. We understand the Muslim dome is there. We understand if you knock it down, you're going to have to fight 57 nations. We're going to fight them for you. Would you like to build your temple? How quickly do you think the Jews will go with that deal? About 2 seconds? The Temple Mount Society is dying to build that temple. They've put the furniture together for 20 years. They're waiting. They've got the red heifer. They just can't build. All they need is that covenant. So he says, go ahead, build your temple. You can do your sacrifices. Verse 27, he confirms the covenant. What does he do in the midst? Then he causes their sacrifices and their oblations to cease. And now he's going to begin the overspreading of abomination. He's going to walk in there and make that temple desolate, the abomination of desolation. I'm God. Worship me. So this is the way I've seen this, and for 22 years, and it looks like it's starting to happen. Go home and look at YouTube, and I saw the Netherlands, I saw Ireland, I saw England, I saw Germany, all in the past week. Boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, people rising up. They're ready. You can do it in America real easy. You know how many guys are ready with guns, shotguns, handguns? They're sick and tired of their women being raped. They're sick and tired of their schools being told this is a religion of peace. When they brought the towers down, I know there are idiots that think the American government did that. Are you really that stupid? Those were Muslims that did that, you fools. And by the way, I just saw, yesterday I showed my wife, a new one just popped up. 9 minutes and 11 seconds of 9/11, and it showed the buildings coming down. I go, why is this popping up now? Because the Antichrist is going to use it to piss off Japheth all over the world and in America. This is my thought on it. And so that's Daniel 8 in today's world. Amen.